morning. Happy Saturday. I'm Dustin. This is the Keto Simple Saturday Sit Down. And boy, do I have a great show for you today. I have a man on here to talk with me today that really needs no introduction whatsoever. His name is Bob. Let's talk to him. Let's go ahead and bring him on. Good morning, Bob. Semi-retired Bob is your name. I'm so glad you are here, sir.
Hey, Dustin, thanks for having me. It's way too early in the morning, but let's give this a try.
You look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm so glad that you are.
That's just the coffee talking, man.
Well, thanks again so much for being here. And I just have some questions for you. We'll see what the chat has for us as well today. We'll see if they have any questions. So we have, and for those who are familiar with you, have seen your overwhelming transformation. In the thumbnail, I did post some, I did put pictures of your before and after, and your tremendous transformation is amazing. But I kind of wanted to kind of turn back the clock a little bit, kind of go back to where, or before you started the transformation, to kind of get an idea of who you were then, what your mindset was, and then how that or how that started moving yourself into the way, into carnivore, keto, that whole journey that you have gone down to get us where we are today.
Okay, well, to understand where my mindset was just before I started this transformation, we do have to go back. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible because we want to get to as many questions as we can today. But you have to turn the clock back to 1983 when I was discharged from the United States Army because I had gout. And slowly over the years, I got sicker and fatter because I knew I was putting on weight. But, we didn't question our doctors. I was given a proper diet to follow according to what they said. And all that did was I slowly got sicker and fatter over the years. Every time I tried to start to lose weight, because, we all knew as a fact that all you had to do, it was very easy to lose weight. All you have to do is eat less and move more. And the problems that I ran into was on the move more side of it. Every time I started to move more, I would have a gout attack, which set me back a couple of weeks. And so it just continued to snowball on me to where, 20 years later, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And then a few years after that, which was actually almost 6 years ago now to the day, I had a triple bypass surgery. So even after the triple bypass surgery, I was feeling a little better because, of course, now my heart's not all plugged up and I'm getting oxygen to it. But I still, still had gout, still had arthritis and spinal stenosis and all of the things that go with that. So I couldn't do a whole lot of stuff. And my mental state, I didn't realize at the time how bad my mental state had gotten, because it was, when it's like the frog in boiling water. If you put a frog into a pot of cold water, then turn the heat on and slowly raise the temperature up, the frog will sit there and cook to death. That's my recipe for frog soup, by the way. But if you take a frog and throw it in a pot of hot water, he'll jump right out. And that's sort of what happened to me with my mental state. I was slowly sliding downhill and didn't even realize it until I got to the point where I was just sitting around the house waiting to die. The biggest change in the mental side of things was pointed out to me by a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who's also my boss at the miniature golf course I work at. He saw my transformation happening last summer, but this summer, about 3 days into working, he walked over to me and said, there's the guy I hired back in 1990. he said that, my whole outlook on everything was just so much brighter, that I had my cheer back and was ready to go. Um, I hope I've sort of answered your question, or was there some more you wanted to know?
Oh, 100%. Like, that's what I always like to kind of get an idea of where people come from, because we all deal with our own internal battles. That, what you said, where you were just kind of waiting to die, I fully understand where you're coming from, with that. Before we went on air, we were talking about our parents, kind of my mother, your mother. My mother spent the last about 10 years of her life in and out of nursing homes, rehab facilities, having strokes, heart attacks, and everything. And I just assumed, or basically resigned myself to the fact that, well, that's going to be me when I get to her age. That's just going to be what I'm going to deal with. This is how it's going to go. I don't have a way to fix this. I've tried all these diets, low fat, low calorie. I've done everything, gone to the gym every day for months at a time. And well, this is just how it's going to be. So I understand. And I think it's so very important that we not just talk about the physical, but we talk about the mental, because so often the mental is what keeps so many people from taking that first step into changing themselves, making a huge difference in their lives. And so that's why I want to always I try to start off with that kind of question, because it is so very important. So thank you for that, Bob.
Yeah, the mental side is very important. Um, and so many people don't even realize that their mental state is going down. The first thing I noticed when I, started watching Dr. Barry, before I even started the transformation, I threw away my statins. And I noticed within 3 or 4 weeks that my mental clarity was starting to come back, because I had been on statins for so long. And there was not a big change there. But one of the things that I noticed was that I could start to add numbers in my head again. Back in the day, I was a walking human calculator. And I just sort of lost that ability without even noticing it over the years. But then I got rid of the statins, and I will not say I'm back to where I was yet, because I'm not nearly as smart as I used to be, but I can tell that it's slowly coming back.
Wonderful. Let's take a minute here. We've got some wonderful people in the chat, and I just want to make sure we acknowledge them, because they are so gracious to join us so very early in the morning. We've got
Mm-hmm.
John Gugahan is in the house. He is excited. He says the great before and after picture of you on the thumbnail. Evelyn is here. She is a wonderful, wonderful lady. I got a chance to meet her at KPL back in October. Good morning. I'm not sure if we've spoken before, if she may be one of someone that you know.
I don't recognize that name, but welcome. I'm glad she's here.
Welcome. Me too. And John Gugahan, and I know we're saying his name wrong, but it's kind of become a running joke with Mr. Gugahan.
Yes, and he's a regular on several channels, and he usually arrives, because I go live normally Friday afternoon at 2:30. So he's just getting home from work, and he tunes in usually for about the last 15 to 20 minutes of my live, because he's just getting home from work. So that's where that comment of getting to watch from the beginning comes from.
Yes. And we've got Stacy and Ken here. So they're watching. I love them both. They're so very sweet. And we've got Danny. He's going to Keto Christmas party today. That's going to be amazing. That's going to be fun.
That'll be fun.
And he is in Ohio, the same as, well, in Ohio, the same with Stacy and Ken. I don't know how close they are to each other, but it looks like that Stacy, that her and Ken are going to go to that too. We've got just Jason Keto. Good morning, sir. I am glad you are here. I sent you a text message this morning. I figured you wouldn't be awake, but I wanted to get it sent to you before my mind shifted and I forgot. Trauma Mama is in the house. Thank you so much for being here. It's her first time being here. Connie K, thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
She says, "Hi, gentlemen." She must be talking to you.
Well, we can both be gentlemen, I guess.
No, I'm a redneck.
Yeah. And we've got Stacy said that they live far. They live about 3 hours of difference from each other, but I want to say thank you to all the members that we have here today. And I'm going to put a little stream or a banner going across the bottom just so we can see them and give them a little shout out this morning. So then we can continue our conversation, Bob.
Sure.
And so once you started your transformation, what was it that clicked that made you know without a shadow of a doubt that this was going to be a long-term change for you and you weren't going back?
Okay. Well, besides the mental part, one of the reasons why I started this diet, because I was one of these people that had tried everything. I remember the grapefruit diet and the cabbage soup diet and all of the stuff through the 80s and 90s. I tried it all and none of it worked. And the main reason I started this, because remember, I didn't actually realize how bad my mental state had gotten. I was looking for some pain relief because I had arthritis and spinal stenosis. I couldn't stand for more than 2.5 minutes at a time. I was taking the maximum dosage of Lyrica every day. Plus, in between times, I was taking Tramadol just to get through the day. And the thing that I noticed first, because I tried this for some pain relief, didn't know if it was going to work or not. I was convinced I was one of these people that couldn't lose weight, but I sat down to record my second video. My first one was called like Semi-Retired Bob Goes Carnivore. And that was more of I wasn't expecting anybody to watch it. I had about 25 subscribers at the time that had been there from back when I had a photography channel. And I figured, well, I'll just put this up on there rather than calling, because it was basically friends and family, rather than calling them all to inform them what I was going to try for pain relief. I just made a little video, Semi-Retired Bob Goes Carnivore. And then my second video, which was, I think, 29 pounds in 29 days or something like that, I had set my note sheet off to the side for things I wanted to talk about. And my left shoulder had always been the bad one. If I had set a piece of paper down, like even where my cereal bottles are now, I would have to turn and lean forward to get to stuff. And I was sitting there in front of the camera and then, oh, I need my note sheet. It's over there. And I just reached over and grabbed it and started to read through my note sheet again. And it dawned on me. It's like, did I just do that? How did I reach that piece of paper that was over there? And I realized at that point that not only did my shoulder not hurt nearly as much, but I could actually reach things off to my left. And that's when I realized, I think this is actually going to work. And I have not looked back since. When I originally started, I was thinking, well, I'll give this a shot for 30 days, see if it works. It's not going to work because nothing like this is going to work. But it was at that point I said, okay, I can do this. I hope that answered.
I had a similar experience with that, where I didn't necessarily know that I was in pain. I mean, I knew my knees bothered me, and I would take ibuprofen in the morning just about every day. And I was the type of person I would have ibuprofen in the bathroom, I had ibuprofen at my work desk. And so I would take it multiple times a day, not really thinking about the pain. I just knew my knees bothered me. And the same thing with, I had allergy medicine. I was taking large quantities of allergy medicine, way more than you're supposed to take. Most people would probably sleep for 30 hours with what I was taking. I was going on about my day with ibuprofen, allergy medicine, and all of that. I was taking heartburn medication. I was doing all this. And it was not until one day where I just kind of remember that I hadn't taken ibuprofen in a while. I hadn't really thought about taking my allergy medicine for a while. I didn't feel any pain, and my knees didn't bother me, and I wasn't drowsy at 2 o'clock in an office setting, which was not a normal thing for me. I was like 2, 3 o'clock. I'm like, because I work till 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
So 2 o'clock rolls around and I'm drowsy. I'm nodding off. I'm fighting to stay awake because you don't want your boss to walk around and see you just your eyes half closed. So that's really the turning point for me. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but you just talked a little bit about the mental clarity coming back, being able to do math in your head and all of that. That was a huge thing for me because it always felt like I was walking around in kind of like a fog, like I was walking through some kind of like swamp. I just felt foggy, swampy, just hard to move through life. And then
Mhm.
one day I just had that awakening where I was clear-headed. I felt like I was living in HD. I wasn't living in black and white anymore. And huge. Like you can't put a price tag on that feeling. You can't, if there was a pill for that feeling, we'd be taking it. You know what I mean? But so that was huge, and that's why I stick with it. So I always kind of want to know, what was it for you? So thank you for answering that question for me.
Sure.
And it looks like we got a couple new members. Stacy and John Gugahan are now members. I appreciate you. Shander appreciates you too, even though she's at work today. Thank you both so very much. It does mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much for your support. Now I have to update my little banner and I'll get that for next week. So, what does this lifestyle look like for you moving forward? Now, you said something yesterday, I believe in your live. If I didn't, it may not have been your live. I know you posted somewhere about you're doing a push-up challenge with yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I don't actually. Yeah, I've been doing push-ups. It's not a push-up challenge. It's just part of my fitness routine. Because
Mhm.
if you follow my channel, I follow Coach Bronson closely, and I also listen to the advice of Jonathan over at Carnivore Muscle. And I'm actually against things like push-up challenges because a push-up challenge, they say we're going to try and do X number of push-ups every day for a month. And I think that's an incorrect approach for maximum muscle building if that's what you're trying to do. You should have a full day of rest in between. So I do push-ups every other day. I do my upper body exercises one day and my lower body exercises another day. I do still walk every day, but I don't walk as far as I used to because I'm doing so much other stuff. Back when I was walking 5, 6, 7 miles a day, that was the only exercise I was getting because that's the only exercise I could do. But about a year ago, I started doing, I wouldn't even call them push-ups. I was just leaning against the wall from about a foot away and doing push-ups against the wall. And then I slowly found things lower and lower and lower. And in line with my 1% better a day theme that I talk about a lot on my channel, I just, kept slowly trying to push to get one more, just one more. And a couple of days ago when I did my push-up routine, I am now at, because when I first went down to the ground and actually tried a real push-up, I could do 3 to 5 in the first set. and then just a couple or three in the second set. And that's the correct way to work out. According to Coach Bronson and Jonathan at Carnivore Muscle and everybody like that I follow, is basically 2 sets, both of them to muscle failure, to what feels like you just can't do another one or you're going to collapse on the floor. Do 1 set, rest 5 minutes, do a second set, and you're done, which is why, even Coach Bronson only spends 30, 40 minutes a day at the gym, even doing all of the things that he does, because he does the 2 set to failure thing. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track here. When my push-ups from the last time, I just felt like I can do more. I can keep going. And the first set of my push-ups this last time, I did 50 in the first set and 42 in the second set. So I've made quite a bit of gains since I started doing that.
That's impressive. So I come from, and I'm sure that you went through this in school as well, but I came from, being in school in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, where we had that presidential fitness requirements for school, where we were supposed to do so many pull-ups. We never did push-ups, weirdly enough. We did sit-ups, we did pull-ups, but I could never do a pull-up. I've never been able to do an entire pull-up. Even when I was a skinny, scrawny little kid, I was never able to climb the rope. I think back about that and so much anxiety. Even though really I don't think there was a word for anxiety back then, but just that, the shuttle run where you're picking up, the big black erasers and you're running back and forth and you're trying to, I'm terrified of heights. So we were supposed to be able to climb this rope and then crawl across this thing and slide down or whatever. And I'm like, it's only 5 or 6 feet off the ground, but I don't like heights. So here I am, a first, second, third, fourth grader, I don't want. I mean, that probably had a lot to do with me not being able to climb the rope, but I still never been able to climb a rope. Never been able to do a full push-up. So I think come the new year, I am going to try to do, it'll probably take me a few days, a few weeks to get to where I can do a legitimate full push-up on the ground. And that's kind of an embarrassing thing as a 44-year-old man to say or to admit that I'm 44 years old. I've never been able to do a full on the ground push-up. I was always, if we couldn't do the full push-ups, we could do the girl push-ups, if you will. And I put that in quotes because that's what we called them at the time, where you put your knees on the ground and you're basically knees and hands, and then you do the push-ups, which, I could do those kind of all day, but I've never been able to do a pull-up. There's just a lot of physical things that I have issues with that stem even when I was a skinny, little, scrawny, early elementary school kid before I started gaining weight.
Okay. Well, the presidential fitness thing was significantly past my time because I'm quite a bit older than you are.
Right.
But because we had the ropes to climb in our gym, but they were not 5, 6 feet off the ground. It was 25 feet up to the roof of the gym where we were at. But do you have stairs in your house?
Yes.
Okay. What I would suggest to you to start your push-ups, stand at the bottom of the stairs and go to the 4th step and start your push-ups there. And then when you can basically feel like you can go forever or do 40 or 50 or whatever, then slide your feet back and go down to the 3rd step and slowly work your way down the staircase. And that will continue to add a little bit of body weight pressure and your arms will slowly get stronger without risk of injuring yourself. Because if you just go to the ground and try and do push-ups, it's very possible you'll hurt yourself rather than see any gains. So I would suggest starting on the stairs, and to keep proper posture, once you get onto the steps, consciously lower your rear end down until it feels like you're flat. And then wherever your hands are, try to look 1.5 to 2 steps up from there while you're doing the push-ups, and that will keep your spine in good alignment.
I'm definitely going to try doing that. I should have been doing that for years. And I know I should be doing that type of stuff. but it's easy to ignore the hard stuff like physical exercise. So let's look at some of these. We're kind of backed up on comments here. Let's see. We've got
Yeah, that's okay.
Christy is here. Thank you for joining us. She says, hello, Dustin and Bob.
Hello, Christy. I think I talked to her tomorrow afternoon.
I think she and I have, I think
Yeah, I've
we're
got
in a couple of
her.
months from now.
I've got her on my schedule for tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central.
Oh, fun. I have her on my schedule sometime. I can't think. I think it's in January, maybe. I have to double check.
See, unlike all you fancy kids that have the technology toys and you keep your calendar on the computer and all that stuff, I still have the old school book with people written in times.
I've got a calendar on my phone that if I update it on my phone, it updates on Chandra's phone, because otherwise the two of our schedules, we have to be linked, or like she'll plan something and I'll plan something, and then it's a conflict, and then one of us has to cancel something. So if it happens, it's got to go in the calendar. So everything we do has to be in that calendar. So we are lucky that we're technologically able to do that. So I would not do it if it was paper. I just have the handwriting of a frog. So
yeah.
Let's see. Stacy says, thank you for being here and sharing your keto lifestyle. It helps so many of us. She's just the sweetest. And I've got her coming on. She's my last interview for 2023. So I'm super excited to sit down and talk with her. She's so sweet. Her and her husband both. And Jason says, remember to hit the thumbs up. That really does help us out so very much. Jeannie Bat says, good morning. Dustin, good morning. Bob, somewhat retired Jeannie here. Says she's also a fan of Coach Bronson.
Mm-hmm.
And Christy says she went from 2 push-ups to 10 push-ups in October. And when I was working on push-ups last month, I did planks. I did 2 sets to failure.
Excellent.
And it looks like here's a question for you, Bob. It says, what did doctor managing your gout have to say about carnivore lifestyle? Most suggest limiting red meat and then write RX for these medications.
Indomethacin, Indocin, and colchicine. And those are 2 tertiary gout drugs. The primary one is allopurinol, which is actually a generic for, I can't remember the name of the real drug now. It's been so long since that one was even made anywhere. But my doctor had nothing to say about it because I didn't talk to him about it. I had been getting the same stupid advice from the time I got out of the Army. The Army doctor gave me a handout on what I should be eating. I found a doctor right after I got out of the service, and he gave me a handout. And every doctor I had for the next 40 years gave me the same handout. And if you go out to Dr. Google right now and type in gout diet, the first 25 or 30 entries will be the exact same handout that I was given back in 1983. They all say limit, not just limiting red meat, but limit all meat. If you're going to have meat at all, it should be either chicken or fish, and only 2 ounces a couple of times a week, because meat causes gout. That's their whole thinking. And the entire thinking of the medical industry is wrong, because since switching to an all meat diet, because I'm not keto, I am carnivore, switching to an all meat diet, I have not had a single gout attack since I made the switch, not one. After having, 2 to 3 a month for the previous 40 years. So, yeah, I don't actually talk to I don't have a primary care physician anymore, because I saw him last year at some point. I had just started the journey. I was down, about 65, 70 pounds, somewhere in that range. My kidney markers had come back better than they'd been in decades. My liver markers were better than they'd been in decades. I was down in weight. I wasn't in as much pain. All of these things were getting better. My diabetes, my A1C had dropped from 10.3 down to 4.8. And all he wanted to talk about was my elevated LDL. And I probably should have been a little nicer, but I said, if that's really all you want to talk about, then we can't be friends anymore. You are so far behind in your reading that I don't think it's possible for you to become a real doctor again. You're just a pill pusher. And please get my records ready. I will send for them when I find a new doctor. And since then, I've never actually found a new primary care physician. I don't feel like I need one. I still go see my cardiologist because I did have a triple bypass surgery. And when I'd first gotten out of the hospital from the triple bypass, he said, and now we'll see each other every 6 months till one of us dies. And this last time in there, he took me off my blood thinner and said, I'll see you in a year. You're doing great.
Now, did he ask you about your diet? Did he ask what you were doing? Did he have any interest?
My cardiologist actually did, and he had nothing bad to say about it because he can't stick with it. He's tried keto off and on for many years, and he believes in it. He just loves his pasta and breads too much to ever actually be a true keto. He's actually an interesting person because if I tell you my cardiologist is an Indian doctor, you're going to think I hate stereotype, but most Indian doctors are these tiny little skinny guys that speak with an accent. And that's just what you think of when you think of Indian doctors. And Dr. Salfidi is a mountain of a man. He is about 6'6" and weighs about 360, 370 pounds. I'm just guessing. He is a huge, huge man. He's not super fat. I mean, he's got a lot of muscle on him, but the first time you go in to see him, it's like, wow, I came to an Indian doctor and you are huge. And I know it's stereotyping, but you just don't normally see Indian doctors that are that big. But he's a big fan of keto. He partially worries about the LDL, but he says, we're not going to pay too much attention to that because all of your other markers are fantastic. So he's much more up to date than my primary care physician was.
The last full-time GP that I had he was an older gentleman. I started seeing him because that's who my grandma went to. And it just made it easier for me to take her to her appointments and me to see the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made sense. And I was going in to see him at the time when we were just starting low carb, when we weren't sure keto wasn't on our lips yet. We didn't quite know what low carb was, but we were starting low carb. So we were complete noobs, and we were in his office and Shannon and I were sitting there and he was talking to us about cutting back starches and cutting back carbs, not eating potatoes and not eating pasta. And he's like, if you want to lose weight, you just got to be in ketosis. But he didn't elaborate on that, whether or not he was absent-minded and didn't think to elaborate on it. I didn't necessarily ask because it kind of caught me off guard because I didn't know that term. Shander didn't know the term. Now, Shander is a nurse, and she knew ketoacidosis, like most doctors have that terrifying thought when keto gets mentioned, but he didn't elaborate. So that's kind of where I went with my low-carb journey. I started looking at keto and all that stuff. And I went back a couple of years later after I'd lost a significant amount of weight because sitting in his office, I was about 400 plus pounds. I'd probably lost about 10 pounds being in his office up to that point just by doing what we considered low carb. And I was like, you said be in ketosis and I've lost all this weight. And he just kind of stares at me like he didn't know what I was talking about. So that's kind of like why I was wondering, well, maybe he was getting very, very close to retirement. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just thinking, it's just a strange thing to talk about with all the people that we discussed this with, and me having a GP that had mentioned ketosis and not in a bad way, but didn't necessarily elaborate either. So let's see. John Gugahan says he's never been able to do even one pull up his whole life. So at least I'm not alone because you do feel like I should be able to do a pull up. I should be able to do, and rightfully so. We should be able to do these things, but
Yeah.
we aren't.
And now, if you want to learn to do a pull up, get yourself. Of course, you need to have a solid bar that you can do a pull up on. That's not going to break.
Right.
But then get yourself a box so that you can reach the bar without putting any weight on the bar, and then slowly bend your knees and just kind of hang there a little bit, and then push yourself back up, and do that a few times, and you can slowly build up your shoulders. I actually haven't done any pull-ups yet because I've been working out on the cable machine at the Y to strengthen my shoulders, because I spent basically the last 6 years of my life since my heart surgery, because my sternum never healed right. It always felt like I was going to blow apart if I lifted anything more than 5 pounds. So my shoulders had gotten really weak. But I am going to, after the first of the year, start working on pull-ups as well.
You speak about your sternum. So when I started losing weight, my sternum felt weird. So when I was kind of started to be able to feel my sternum, it felt weird, and I didn't really know much about it, and I didn't think much about it. And then I heard Mike Gorman. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's in the keto space, weight loss space. He has the Fat Guy podcast and such. And one day I heard him on someone else's podcast talking about how he had gotten so big that it had deformed his sternum. And it was like kind of popped out at the bottom. And I'm like, that's what happened to me. Like, you don't even think, like, the idea that your sternum can get deformed by getting too big is insane.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes sense, right? There's all that weight on you. Your body's not necessarily meant to hold and be 400. What he got in the fives, almost 600 pounds twice. I'm planning to have him on one day soon, or in the next couple of months. We're going to schedule a day to have him on so we can hear his story as well. But just the craziness that is the fact that your body can deform like that. Like, you don't think about that. And then you had obviously the open heart surgery, the triple bypass, and they cut your sternum open. But yeah.
Yeah, well, and my ribs stick out on the bottom, as well as my sternum deformed while I was healing, because I was so loaded up with visceral fat. I don't know if you follow Dr. Sean O'Mara or not, but he's a big visceral fat guy. And the hospital I was at here, it's actually a very good hospital for triple bypass surgery, because at the time when they told me I needed to do it, my first thought was, I'm going to Ohio State University hospitals to get this done, because that's the best hospital in the world. And a friend of mine's the head of the cardiology department there. And I called him and said, hey, can you guys get me in? And he's like, I can get you in. I can even send an air ambulance to pick you up. But is this the hospital you're going to in Omaha? And I said, yeah, that's where I'm at. And he's like, you won't find a better hospital anywhere in the country for heart surgery. So I just stayed in Omaha and had that done. But at that hospital, the nurses that work on the ICU unit, the cardiac ICU, they actually have to watch your surgery for them to be able to take care of you, so that they know everything that happened during the surgery. And Sam, who was my nurse, great guy, by the way, but he was telling me that, the reason my chest might hurt just a little bit is because my surgeon had trouble, because I was so loaded with visceral fat, he had trouble getting my chest to close. Normally, what they do is they wrap wires around both halves of your sternum and give a pull, and your chest comes back together. He said mine, they had so much trouble that he was jerking on the wires so hard that I was literally lifting 6 to 8 inches off the operating table. And that's what they had to do to get my chest closed again, which is
That's crazy.
part of why my chest is now deformed.
I remember I had hernia surgery while I was still over 400 pounds or so. And I remember coming out of surgery, coming out of the anesthesia, and I remember them taking 4, 5, maybe, I don't know. I was very out of it still, but I knew there was at least 4 or 5 people who had to move me from, the gurney from the surgery into my hospital bed. And I remember being out of it, but apologizing to them that I couldn't help them because I knew that I was big.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And they're like, don't worry about it. But still, like, that guilt, that shame, all of that, even when you're like heavily sedated, comes through. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm really glad that you're sharing that with us because, oh, again, like, just so many little details that kind of get left out of the stories that we tell. You know, the idea that my sternum deformed because I was so heavy, the idea that you had to have these that much trouble getting things closed up on the operating table. So many interesting and compelling things that we don't ever think about that someone may be listening to and go, that might be what causes them to take that first step. They don't want to end up like that because, you know, I have friends, and whether they're type 1 diabetics or, family, all these different people in my personal life that are now starting to take like Ozempic and these type of drugs, and you want to just shake them and be like, please don't, just eat meat and eggs. And regardless, I know we're not medical professionals, we're not doctors, we're not nurses, we're not in the medical industry, and I know that these things we can talk openly anecdotally about what's happened to us personally, but you want to shout from the rooftops to all the people that you love and care about to not take these drugs, to just change your diet a little bit. And yeah, so that's why hopefully sharing these stories, sharing our anecdotes can hopefully jumpstart or kickstart someone's journey because, okay, well, I don't want to have to deal with that, or I understand that shame. I understand that oh, me too. I've never been able to do a pull up. I've never been able to do a push up, all of that stuff. So,
Yeah, and that's the whole point of why I do what I do. Because, as you well know, as a YouTube creator, I could probably go walk along the highway and collect aluminum cans and take them to the recycling center and make a lot more money than I do on YouTube.
right.
But I choose to do this because if I can reach one person that now does not have to go through everything I've gone through in my life, then doing this every day has been worth it.
110%. Let's see. Christy says, we still have the presidential fitness requirements in school, at least here in California. They take a test in spring in grade 5, mile run, push ups, sit ups, flexibility, trunk lift. Yeah, I remember trying to run. Even when I was a skinny kid, I just couldn't run. I didn't have the endurance or like the the ability to breathe. So I mean, maybe it was asthma or whatever. Maybe it was just, I had a bad diet my whole life. Regardless if I was skinny or not, I had a bad diet. I was eating cereals and all that stuff. We'd have candy and everything, just like, the normal 80s kids would have. So that probably lends to why, and not, I mean, we played outside all the time. I was an 80s kid. So, we played outside. We drank from the hose. We came in when the street lights came on. A general, a normal Gen Xer. But running and being athletic was never part of what I was into,
Yeah, I never did a lot of running or athletic type stuff, but I grew up out in the middle of nowhere in southeastern Ohio, and my stepdad's favorite saying was, "A man who chops his own wood heats himself twice." And I got to experience that a lot.
Oh, that's great. That's that's like I think that's better than teach a man to fish.
Mm-hmm.
Stacy says, "Thanks, Bob, for the stair push-up idea." They were going to share that. She's going to share that in her group meeting. So Stacy and her husband, they have the Easy Peasy Keto. It's a YouTube channel. So if any of you who are listening to this, watching this, whether live or on replay, go give them a follow. They have weekly or monthly meetings. They get together with people in their area up in Ohio where they do basically this, but in person. So that's very commendable. They're, like I said, they're just super sweet. And it's really great that they're
Mm-hmm.
really giving back to their community. And Trauma Mama says that she's old school too. Spironolactone, but I can't spell it today. I'm guessing that might be a gout medication or so. I
Yeah,
think
I actually
maybe.
think that's a blood pressure medicine slash. It inhibits something in the body. I don't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head.
Big Bob is in the house. Good morning, Bob. Another Bob. Bob squared. And Trauma Mama says high carb diets cause gout. But we haven't seen, any kind of studies that prove that. Let's see. Things like nuts cause gout. So Jason says things like nut cause his gout to flare up. So it could be things like the oxalates and such. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Xyloprim is the original name of the drug that is now allopurinol.
Cindy, good morning, ma'am. I'm so glad you are here, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
Cindy's super sweet. I'm sure you've had a chance to talk to her before, right?
I have not. I saw her she comments on a lot of my videos.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen her around, but we have not actually gotten a chance to talk yet. Hopefully she'll send me an email at some point so that we can set that up.
Oh, I'm sure she will.
Mm-hmm.
She was my guest last week.
Yes.
So she says, and Stacy says they're on the search for a keto-friendly, looks like general practitioner in Northwest Ohio. We live in Fostoria, about 45 minutes south of Toledo. Yeah, that's the hard part, is trying to find a decent GP that's going to work with us and not work against us, because the last GP that I had was attached with my job, because where I worked in a big office building and we had a clinic in the basement. So if we needed any reason, we'd get physicals and we would do everything there. So I would go downstairs, get the physical, get all the blood work done. And then I would have my consultations once the blood work come back. And then the GP would say, how much red meat do you have? And I was like, I eat it every day, basically. Some days I fast, some days I don't eat anything. But typically, if I'm eating, it contains some sort of red meat or meat in general. And she's like, well, maybe you should, maybe have less red meat throughout the week. And I'm like, you've seen my biomarkers over the last 2 years, and they have year over year have gotten better. And I've only been eating more red meat. Why would then you sit here and tell me to cut back red meat when you're seeing my biomarkers are getting better? My A1C gets better. My cholesterol numbers get better. And, and I understand that for the most part, they have a script, they have a playbook that they have to go by and tell us, I mean, so it's kind of wonder, like, well, do we really need them? And like, even though we are not medical professionals, doctors, nurses, and all that, and none of this would be medical advice, just again, our own anecdotal stories and things that have happened for us. But I digress. I kind of wonder, do we really need GPs? And I imagine that some people do. If you have, if you've had, gastric bypass or sleeves, or, with, with you, Bob, you've had the open heart surgery and such. So you obviously want to have people keeping it, tabs on all of that and make sure that all of that is healing well and
Mhm.
going according to plan. Because when you've been cut open, it kind of doesn't really matter what you've eaten if it doesn't heal right. So
Yeah. In searching for a primary care physician, um, if you're not aware, Dr. Barry has a video about this, and if you look down in the description of that video, I think it's I think it's called "How to Find a Low Carb Doc" or something like that. But he lists several websites where you can go and search for low carb doctors. I used one of those, and of course, the only one that's near me is a gal I heard speaking at the Omaha Hard to Kill Summit, and she's a gynecologist, so I can't go see her. But you can find them, and getting a good low carb doctor, even if you have to drive an extra hour to get there, is probably worth going to. Having said that, I talked about this. I don't remember whose podcast I was on at that time, but I said this then and I got a little bit of pushback, but I'm going to say it again now. If you have some conditions, like I've had heart surgery, so I do still need to go see my cardiologist, but where does this go get a yearly checkup come from? I don't actually believe we need doctors as much as the medical profession would have us believe. My grandmother's first trip to the doctor was she was getting cataracts in her late 90s. She lived to be 106. That was her very first trip to the doctor's office. My granddad, his first trip to the doctor's office, he ran a huge dairy farm in northern Ohio. His first trip to the doctor was in his late 60s. Where does this, we got to go get a checkup every year, come from? Now, granted, there are some conditions that you can get where you're going to need to keep track of your stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, other than seeing my cardiologist, I don't have a primary care physician now because I don't feel like I need one. Unless something feels like it's going to fall off or it's turning black, I feel no need to go see a primary care physician. I used to have to go to the primary care physician because I took 13 drugs in the morning plus 9 more at night and pain pills throughout the day. But I'm off all my medication. I don't take anything anymore. What do I need to go see a doctor for? That's just my thoughts on it. This is not advice to you to not go see the doctor, but my personal opinion is, do you really need to go see a doctor every year? What for? Especially now.
I think I agree with you, though I understand that having insurance to maintain, or insurance for what insurance really should be for, is in case something bad happens, an accident where you have large sums of medical bills and they're supposed to help you with the accidents, or you got a car accident, or you cut your arm off or whatever, right? But I think then you need to have, going to see somebody yearly just to make sure you're doing okay. I get the idea why we wouldn't want to, but I also kind of see like why we would. But again, finding one that is going to be in alignment with what you're doing, or going to be looking at what you do and actually taking it under advisement and learning from what we do, and not just say, well, you shouldn't do that. Here's what you should do. And be like, well, that's what made me sick in the first place. I think then I think if we can change the dialogue with what doctors want us to do versus what we're doing, or if they're willing to listen to us and not just push a medication to us, I think then that dialogue would change. But as it stands right now, I think you're right. Where if they're just going to push a drug our way or tell us to eat less meat or whatever, then it is kind of unnecessary. Again, not medical advice, but I
Mhm.
understand where you're coming from. I wish we had the ability to have doctors who would look at what we're doing and learn from it and go, okay, well, I've seen all these patients that I have, and they're doing what I'm telling them, or at least they seem to be doing what I'm telling them, and they're getting sicker and fatter. And then here you come along doing the complete opposite of what I'm telling you, and you're getting healthier, skinnier, more fit, whatever. Maybe I should look at the reason for that. Let's take a look at that. Then I could see us going and seeing a doctor once a year, because it is always good to have a second pair of eyes looking at things, especially as
Yeah.
we get older.
Yeah. And
None of us are getting younger. So
the other thing you can do if you really feel like you need that checkup, Dr. Barry and Kim Howerton wrote a book together called Common Sense Labs that tells you what lab work they recommend you get done. And then you can go to a website called not Common Sense Labs, it's ownyourlabs.com.
Right.
And just go get your own lab work and then use the information in the book to see where you're at. And then if you have something that's way out of whack, you can go schedule an appointment with a primary care physician or someone who specializes in whatever thing your lab result is out. That's what I would do. I mean, I've said this a few times on my channel, and I'll say it again today. I don't go to a doctor to get medical advice anymore, because even if I went to the doctor tomorrow and he said, this is what you need to do to not die next week, I wouldn't do that thing, because I know how much better I feel now versus where I was almost 19 months ago. If he told me to go back to that, I would rather go ahead and have one more week of feeling fantastic over another 20 years of feeling like I did before this.
100%. I could have said that better myself. And I see that there is a question here for you.
Sure.
Evelyn's asking, do you take any extra elements or minerals for your carnivore way of eating?
I use Keto Chow Daily Minerals. It was designed by Chris Bear, the owner and creator of Keto Chow, along with Dr. Barry. And it has the correct blend of everything you need, except it's low on sodium, because most people are going to use salt on their food. But I was just watching the four guys over in UK. It's Jonathan and Coach Steven and some other, I forget their names, but they were just talking about how so many of these electrolyte companies, they come out with X amount of sodium and then this much potassium and this much magnesium, and those ratios are not correct. If you look at the ratios of electrolytes that are in meat when you cook and eat meat, the potassium needs to be much, much higher, which is why so many people have problems with their potassium. And then if you look at the Keto Chow Daily Minerals, it has a lot more potassium than anything else in it. So it's the correct dosage of everything that will be combined with the salt you put on your food to get you back up to where you need to be on sodium. So I use Keto Chow Daily Minerals. I would say link in the description, but I'm not on my channel right now. I'm on Dustin's.
I have a link in the description. I'm a Keto Chow affiliate. You can use mine or you can use Bob's. Won't hurt my feelings either way, as long as you're getting your discount and you're trying them out. I don't have any care for that. I just want to make sure that if you're going to try it, you get a discount. So I have some. I don't think I've used them yet.
Yeah,
and I would like have some.
Yeah, I would like to add the reason I take the daily minerals, and Dr. Barry has a couple really good videos on this, as well as several others. But the reason we have to add minerals to our food today is because our soils have been depleted and they're not full of the nutrients they used to be full of. You think, well, the cow's been grazing on grass, it's got everything that it needs. If the cow has been on a regenerative farm that has been doing this for a decade or more, then yes, that meat is complete the way it was hundreds of years ago. But because we've done, mass production agriculture, whether it be in crops or animals or whatever, those animals are not getting the same nutrients that they got several hundred years ago out on their own in the wild. So we need, until the entire world gets behind the regenerative ranching movement, which they should, that's one of the things I'm pretty passionate about. But until the entire world gets behind the regenerative ranching movement, we're going to need to add some of these trace minerals to our diet so that we don't end up deficient in something.
I was listening to an episode of Joe Rogan last week or the week before, and he had a regenerative farm on. I think there was like White Oak Pastures or something. I can't remember exactly which one it was. But they were saying that when they decided to go to a regenerative format, they lost money for many years. So it is very difficult for what would be considered like a factory farm to go regenerative, to make that sacrifice, to lose money for multiple years, because once you go regenerative, then usually your head of cattle you can produce goes way down, and all of that. But I know that there are farms that are doing that. And I understand that for most of us, going to them for all of your meat is not necessarily economical for most people. I would like to say that we should be supporting them, as I say, you should be supporting local farms that are regenerative. We should be doing everything we can to make it more I can't think of the word I want to use. I keep wanting to say desirable, but make it more whatever for the farms to switch over. They know that they're going to put in the work and they're going to get the return. I just know that, especially in today's economy, that it is difficult to go regenerative because the price of everything goes up. And I mean, my whole thing is always get exactly what you get, as much as you can afford. You're always going to come out best. So, I mean, if you can only afford Walmart is going to get you 99% of the way there. But as you maybe start making more money or whatever, you can start putting more into your quality of meat. As I think, we buy most of our meat from Costco and Walmart, and eggs from Costco and Walmart, because that's what we can afford. But I would say, for anybody out there that can afford better than that, I would go with it. But don't go broke trying to feed yourself for that 1% better. I know that 1% over time is going to come out to a higher percentage quality for everybody on the planet if we can get more regenerative farming out there, because it's just one of those things. It's hard to push it, and it's hard not to push it. It's like, I want everyone to buy from there, but I know that not everybody can. I guess that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, there's plenty to unpack in that, Dustin.
Yeah.
First off, that's why when I get down to my newly acquired land in Texas, I'm going to start my own little mini ranch where I'm going to have some chickens and some goats and some sheep, and maybe even a cow or two, depending on how quickly I can get the land turned around. But I have said many times, and I stole this from Dr. Chafee, grass-fed, grass-finished is the gold medal food. Stuff that comes from the feedlot is the silver medal food. The silver medal food is not as good as the gold medal food, but it is better than everything else. And then things like Spam and bologna and hot dogs and all that stuff, that would be considered the bronze medal food. Eat what you can afford, because the difference between grain finished and grass finished, and I say finished because being out here in Nebraska, I can tell you that all cows spend the first 75 to 80% of their life out on pasture. The grain finished means they come into the feedlot for that final 6 months of their life and get fattened up for sale. But if you look at the chemical breakdowns, depending on which study you look at, the difference between grain finished beef and grass finished beef is somewhere between 6 and 9% of nutrient difference. Now you have to make the choice for yourself. Is that extra 6 to 9% worth the, depending on where you're at, triple to even quadruple the cost? That's where you have to make your own choices. I mean, I lost my first 80 plus pounds on the bronze medal food, hot dogs and Spam and bologna and lunch meat and all that kind of stuff. So you just have to eat the best you can afford and go from there.
100%. And you said it a lot better than I did. Thank you for that. And I want to get to some of these comments because we're backed up a little bit, and we're over an hour, but I don't know how long you want to talk with me. But Danny says he's up to 20 to 25 push-ups a day, benching about 100 pounds times 10, and can't do a pull-up. So again, I don't feel alone. And then Stacy says, you guys are hitting it right, nail right on the head. I've had all my disposable body parts removed, artificial shoulder, hip, 3 rods in each foot. Maybe could have prevented this with the ketogenic lifestyle. 100% probably, but we didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And then once you find it out, there's no rewind button to go back and fix it, unfortunately. We can just fix what we can moving forward, and hopefully people will learn from us that haven't gotten to that point yet, and we can start solving some of these issues before they happen. And I know that, like Dr. Baker, who was a orthopedic surgeon or is an orthopedic surgeon, whether or not he's practicing, Gary Fettke, who was an orthopedic surgeon, Gary Fettke, both of them ended up, inadvertently lost their license from trying to help people not get surgery, which is, and I understand hospitals make their money from surgery, but a hospital's primary goal shouldn't be making money. It should be making sure that people don't have to have surgery. Give it to those who are in desperate need, but not those, not those who could be given, a couple of months to heal without needing the surgery. Luckily, I believe that both of them have been reinstated, cleared of any charges or wrongdoing, and then are back above board. Obviously, they weren't doing anything wrong, unless you're thinking of profit-wise. But I digress. Paleo Barbie is here. Lindy, she said she's late. She slept in. That's okay. It is Saturday. Trauma Mama says she's on Medicare and hasn't been to the doctor since 2016. And Christy says she used her own labs. It was easy to do, or that, going to your own labs and getting them pulled. I've been trying to get Shannon to do that for a while, but she's hard-headed. And Big Bob says, my doctor laughs at me when I tell her what I'm doing, but tells me that it's working, so keep it up. So I think that's a lot. I think you're going to see a lot of that with all of this. So I think you're going to see a lot of it where they're like, well, you probably shouldn't do that. They're going to laugh at you when you say, I'm only eating meat. And like, oh, wait, you're getting healthy? That doesn't compute. Christy or Lindy says she's glad you're coming to Texas. I've been to Texas quite a few times, but I've only been to the Dallas, Fort Worth area. I have some sisters there and a friend, and I've got a friend that lives in Austin.
Those are both a long way from where I'm going to be, because my land.
Are you going to West Texas?
West Texas. My land is about 96 miles straight east out of El Paso. Out in the desert there. Actually, the closest thing to my land is Jeff Bezos' launch pad.
Welcome, Ready, Set, Keto. They said, what if Vienna sausage is grass-fed, grass-finished? It could be. Yeah, they would certainly slap on the label and charge you $2 more per can.
Yes.
I think then it would be a silver medalist. I think it would be. But I haven't had a Vienna sausage since I was a kid. My mom used to buy them, and they have a very they have the texture that is very you have to be into that texture. It's very soft.
Mm-hmm.
Maitreya says she's late, but glad you are still here. I'm so glad you are here, Maitreya. Thank you. And let's see. Emily is making keto chow cookies. So we must be talking to James.
Uh-huh.
And Christy says, for now, I'm buying my chicken, pork, pasture raised, but just regular grocery store beef. But I have half a cow on order that is grass-fed and finished. Not available until May, though. $6.75-ish a pound. What I would like to do is if I would get to the point where I have an empty freezer, which I have 3 freezers, the 2 in the garage, the chest freezers, and the freezer that's attached to our refrigerator, is I would like to go in and just buy the steaks and the ground beef from the cow, because that's typically what we eat. We don't eat roasts. We don't anything like that. As overcooked beef to us doesn't digest well. So we eat a lot of rare steaks, and I like medium rare hamburger. I feel it digests better. It doesn't sit so heavy in my stomach. And pork, we don't really eat anymore for the same thing as you have to fully cook pork. You can't really have, rare pork chops. I mean, you can, but it's not advisable. And chicken does fine for us. I really should look at seeing how much pasture-raised chicken thighs are and stuff, because we don't eat enough of them to really, I think even the price difference, I mean, unless they were like $7 or $8 a pound for chicken thighs, we wouldn't do it. But I mean, we try to get our chicken thighs for like 99 cents a pound, store
Yeah,
bought.
I actually have a thing of chicken thighs upstairs thawing out on the counter. I'm going to make those today for my food, and it's I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it's like a 6-pound package of thighs that I paid $7 and some odd cents for, and I'll get 2 or 3 meals out of that. By the time I lay them all out on the pan and coat them in butter and then bake them for a couple hours. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that for us, like chicken thighs is really the only chicken we eat unless we go out to eat, and then we'll get wings. We'll go to B-Dubs because at least as far as we are aware still, they cook in most locations in tallow. So we will go get wings from time to time as a thing to go out to eat. But typically for us, we just get the thighs cheap. But I would like to look into like if I could get just thighs from a farm that are skin on, and see, I would like to know the taste difference. I don't think I've ever had pasture raised chickens where they're getting the bugs, and because I think all the chicken we're getting from stores is all vegetarian fed, which any of us know chickens are not vegetarian. Neither are pigs.
Yeah.
Pigs will eat anything you put in front of them, so will chickens.
Pigs will actually
And
eat
John Goodhand,
absolutely anything.
yeah.
I mean,
And if you ever
especially
watched,
like they'll eat if the farmer falls and breaks his leg and dies in the pig pen, nobody will ever know what happened to him because pigs will eat him too.
right? Yes. If you ever watched the HBO show, what was it called? It was a Western show on HBO. It was really good. I liked it. Where like they would take people that they didn't want found and throw them into the pig pen. But anyway, John is asking if Ready Set is putting a video out today. They said maybe a live, actually filming today for next week. Slackers. I haven't actually put a pre-recorded video out in a long time. So I've got some planned. Been working on thumbnails and trying to get myself. I actually got a new camera. I'm actually super excited about my new camera. I got another GoPro. It's an 11. So you can see it says 11 on it. I got it from Costco because brand new 11, this one with like 2 batteries, an SD card, and a little accessory pack was like $279. But on Amazon, the 9 that I had was like $300.
Yeah,
So,
well, and the 11 just came down in price because the 12 is out
12,
now,
yeah.
and it's competing with the new DJI Pocket 4.
Mm-hmm.
which looks really good, by the way. I'd like to have one of those, but I don't have a spare 500 and some odd dollars laying around to get one.
Yeah. I
But
thought
it's
I
a
would like there's some Sony cameras that I'd like to have. So if this YouTube thing ever pans out and I start making more than a few pennies a day, I would totally love to have some new cameras. Because I like technology and I love all of that. And that's something that I've been fascinated with and editing and ever since I've got into doing the YouTube channel over 3 years ago. That's something that I've been fascinated with and just trying to get what I can get to keep moving forward because my GoPro 9 decided that it didn't want to take batteries anymore, which severely limits the ability to use it. So,
yeah,
yes.
my webcam is a Sony A6400,
Oh, beautiful.
and my walking around camera is an A6600. And of course, if anybody follows Sony, you know that Sony just came out with the new A9 III that is primarily a photography camera, and they've got a new kind of shutter. And you've heard people push the shutter button on cameras that have automatic shutters, and they go click, 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 and take a lot of pictures. The new Sony A9 III spins those pictures out at 120 frames per second.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm looking to, so the Sony that I want is more budget friendly, but still not within my budget. It's not my budget friendly, but I would really love to get the new Sony ZV-1 Mark II.
Mm-hmm.
It's about $1,000, I think. You can get if you get like an accessory bundle, it's $1,000.
For the price of those, I would suggest you looking around at the used shop and get either a Sony A5100, or even go to the A6000, A6100, or even the A6400, like I'm using for a webcam, is much, much cheaper than a ZV-1 now. You buy the body and then get yourself one good Sigma lens for it for a couple of $100, and you're set up for a lot cheaper than a ZV-1. Right. It's not as light as the ZV-1, but you get much better quality out of it, and with an interchangeable lens body, if you decide you want to do some other stuff with it, you can change the lens. Just my opinion.
I appreciate that because I don't know much about cameras, so I'm always going for what's going to be the easiest, most affordable, and what's going to be something that I have with me. Because the best camera you have is the one you have with you.
Yeah, which is why I tend to do a lot of stuff on my phone.
Yeah. And I have an old phone too. My phone's starting to not do what I want it to do anymore. So it makes it, if not, even like leaving comments on YouTube videos takes me about 5 minutes because it just freezes. But Maitreya says Fresh Time Grocery has their grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef, $3.99 a pound. Guess what I'm going to eat for a bit? I need to go over there and check that out and see if I can get some. I'd like to get and patty it out.
Yeah, we used to have Fresh Time here in Omaha. They opened up, and within a year were closed again because there's no market for it here because their stuff is so expensive. And I live in the feedlot capital of the world in Omaha, Nebraska. And there's just no market for really expensive boutique food.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, it's just a Meyer bodega.
Mm-hmm.
It's all. It's owned by Meyer.
Yeah, we don't. Like I said, they were here. They opened up like 3 or 4 stores, and they went out of business. One of the things, the reason I went there one time just to check them out because there's one there. The one was just down the street from me, but I didn't want to have to make more than one stop. And the Fresh Times here did not carry soft drinks. I know that's a dumb thing, but you couldn't buy Coke or Pepsi or any of that kind of stuff there.
You can now.
Yeah. Well, not in Omaha because they're gone.
Yeah.
They didn't make it here.
Let's see. Radical Geek says, Maitreya says she eats a lot of very thin meats and broth. So she does like that hot pot style cooking. Mm-hmm. I've yet to try that. Lindy says, if you have a Sam's Club Plus membership, you can go in early and they mark down meat and we get a lot of grass-fed or organic, etc. for cheaper. I have, unbeknownst to me, a Sam's Club membership that we didn't realize we had until it rebuild on us, and we're like, wait, we still have a Sam's Club membership? We haven't been, and they just charged us again. So I need to go over there to kind of at least maybe get some benefit out of paying the $40 or whatever it is, because we concentrate and focus on Costco, but we don't have a Plus membership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a Costco membership because Dave, the owner of the miniature golf course, has a business Sam's membership. So if I grab him, we can get into Sam's Club early, or I can go to Costco. They're both about the same distance from me. Costco is about 13 blocks north of me, and Sam's Club is about 12 blocks south of me.
Well, the problem for us is Sam's Club is not far, but it's not in the direction we go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we just don't go that way. We don't have any. There's nothing over there that like for us. Like we can go to Costco, but there's like a Walmart across the street. There's a Kroger up the street from that. There's all things that we can hit, and it's not that far. But there's only like one Sam's Club on our side of town and one on the other side of town. It's just it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, really. So.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob says, try Value Market. I went to this place and it smelled bad when I walked in. So I didn't want to buy anything from there because it smelled funky. So, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean that the food is bad or whatever, but first impressions mean a lot. I drove kind of far to go to this place and I didn't find their prices were all that great. And then it smelled weird. So I left. And Lindy says her camera is an iPhone 13. She'd love to have a GoPro.
Well, and that's why this is a Samsung Galaxy 20 Fan Edition.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I got this one instead of something more expensive is that this one, the front-facing camera on this phone is actually a 4K camera, where most of the iPhones, until you get to the 13 or 14, the front-facing camera will just record in 720.
We bought that same camera for our son for Christmas a couple of years ago when it came out, because Marquez Brownlee, he has a YouTube channel, MKBHD, huge tech guy, and he gave it rave reviews, and it was like a $600 phone versus, $1,000 phone. So we got that for him, and he's actually not broke it to pieces. We used to buy on Blue phones, this company BLU from Amazon, and they would fall apart within like a year. Because they use their phones nonstop, and they would just fall apart. Literally, like the backs would fall off, the sides would fall off. I mean, they're kids, they drop it, but we would buy them cases and everything would just fall apart. Things would stop working. So we got him this phone, and he's had multiple cases, but the same phone. So he's done really well. Now, I mean, he's an adult now, so the next phone's on him. But yeah, I mean, I think that's cool. I still got a Note 9, and I'd like to get the new whatever. I'm probably going to wait. We'll probably wait until the next Galaxy iterations come out next year. We'll probably upgrade, and then because we keep phones for a long time because they do work for a long time, but now they're starting to do things where they're not working as well with our in-car stuff, and they're slower with commenting on YouTube. And as someone like me who comments a lot on YouTube, I need it to not take so long. So I just want to say thank you, Bob, for being here. This is about an hour and a half. So I don't know what you've got things to do today. I've got stuff to do today, but I am beyond blessed to have you here today. I've had a wonderful conversation with you. You're very insightful.
Have you scrolled through the comments real quick to make sure there aren't any other questions before we?
Yeah, I've looked through. It looks like there's some people talking about cameras, and they're kind of talking to each other a little bit.
Okay. Good enough. Well, if we're caught up on comments, I would like to say thank you for having me on today. It's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, 100%. Into 2024, we'll get together when I have, and I'll be in contact with you, and we'll plan it out again next year. Because I mean, It's hard to imagine it's December the 2nd already. So I mean, if you can't tell by your Santa hat, But thanks again so very much, Bob. It's been my pleasure. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Any streams you're going to be on? Any videos you've got coming out?
Not really. I have videos that come out every day. You know, I put out a video every day on my channel. It comes out at 2:45 Central Time, or every Friday I'd go live at 2:30. Tune in, subscribe, watch them all. Watch them all from start to finish.
Yes, go and watch. I mean, go and put on a play. I'm sure you've got everything going into playlists. Just go in and watch his playlist from beginning to end, and you'll get to know Bob better than you know yourself. And again, on my channel, we go live I go live Saturdays with a guest, Sundays with a cup of coffee, Tuesdays with Chandra, and I am again working on my own content, regular uploaded, edited content. I promise to have some of that out within the next week. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for everybody who is a member. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next Saturday. Bye, everybody.